This is Amplify You, the podcast about you discovering your message and broadcasting it to the world. If you're a coach, author, or speaker, you'll want to tune in. If you're looking for the best return on your time investment to get your message out to the world in a bigger way, we're giving you full access and behind the scenes look of how we're running our podcast, how our clients have found success, and what you can do to launch your podcast today. The world needs your message. I'm Michelle Abraham, the host. Join my family as we unleash your unique genius and find the connections you need to launch your adventure today. Join us and let's get amplified. Hello, Amplify You, Michelle Abraham, your host, and I am so excited today. Today, I am bringing you a behind the mic interview with Faye. So Angela is one of the many hosts at Canada. She's part of the Canada podcast team. So we're going to dive into what that means, but also Angela is a mobilizing speaker, an impact coach, a promoter, and author who loves to empower purpose-driven individuals and geographically connected property owners to build and imagine places worth living for, which I love this, Angela. That sounds so cool. So you've also built and sold an award-winning real estate development company, and we're going to dive into all sorts of goodies today for you guys. You're coming to us all the way from Vancouver Island, which is our neighbor from where I am on the Sunshine Coast. So we're waving at each other across the waters here. And Angela, thanks for being with us today.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. It is a pleasure.
You're welcome. Well, it's so great to interview another podcast host because I just love how we can have that interaction and that banter. And tell us all about Canada's podcast. And I know one of the other hosts as well. He was one of the very first people I met in podcasting way back in 2012. He came to my meetup groups. That was Robert. It was really cool to see his name on the Canada podcast team as well. So tell us all about Canada's podcast. It seems like an amazing podcast.
Well, let me actually just start by acknowledging Robert, because since he's a mutual connection of ours, my colleague, he started Vancouver's Entrepreneur.
That's right.
And it was a podcast. Yeah. And he would talk to all the movers and shakers in Vancouver. And this was a big piece of his social media company and, also his marketing tool, I'm sure. And he connected with a colleague of mine, Phil Bliss, and who wouldn't want to do business with a guy with the last name Bliss?
Yeah, exactly. That sounds great.
He's a friend of mine in Toronto, and he has an intelligent marketing company called Perceptible. And when Robert and Phil got together, Robert had this grand vision to take Vancouver's Entrepreneur national. Where Perceptible saw an opportunity is they were an intelligent marketing platform, software as a service platform, and they had challenges servicing their clients well with targeted media. And so they've actually started 2 media brands, and one of them is Canada's podcast. So we intentionally now help connect entrepreneurs across Canada. We are intentionally positioned coast to coast. We have hosts across Canada, and we know that storytelling is the evolution, if you like, of intelligent marketing. When you can tap into stories and emotions, and connect with people more deeply, more intimately, and then you can actually leverage the algorithms and the data sets of the podcast itself and readership and viewership, and you can transcript podcast into words so that people can search words. And so all of these sort of intelligent marketing strategies are built into our podcasts. So really our number one goal is to connect entrepreneurs in a more intimate way, and then, obviously help them transform the world for a better future.
I love that. And so how many hosts are there at Canada's podcast?
There are 8. So we have Robert and I here in British Columbia. We really try to focus in our geographies so that we can get a deeper because we have a deeper cultural understanding of the business environment per province. But sometimes we end up doing a few interviews out of province. But so Robert and I in BC, we have Mario, and we're going to have to edit that out, Michelle. We have 2 in Alberta, we have 2 in Toronto, we have 2 in Quebec, and we are about to onboard a new host in the Maritimes and 1 in the Prairie Provinces.
Awesome. So I love how you guys are spread across the country so you can really develop the content that's specific to your area. Yet you guys are bridging the entire country and doing this in such a strategic way of bringing entrepreneurs together. What a cool concept. And have you found or have you seen any other podcasts that are kind of similar to this, where there's so many hosts and it kind of is doing a similar kind of thing? Or you guys are really an anomaly in the podcasting space?
For what we've found, yes, we're an anomaly in the podcasting space in so much as we are actually intentionally showcasing a national entrepreneurial movement. So, and given the scope and size of Canada, this might be happening in some of the smaller European countries. I haven't discovered them yet, but I hope to. And, but trying to combat that on a country the size of Canada has been both a challenge, but also very rewarding.
I bet. Holy smokes, you like spread all across Canada. And I'm sure like each province brings its own challenges to entrepreneurship and its own insights to entrepreneurship. I would imagine that BC has a really strong entrepreneur presence. I feel like actually on the Sunshine Coast here, I'm actually in a co-working space right now that is a part of the Sunshine Coast Economic Development Organization called Scredo. And they opened 3 of these on the Sunshine Coast because they found out that there's more than 36% of our population here on the coast are actually entrepreneurs. And I'm sure that's similar for the island for you as well.
That's a pretty high statistic, I got to say, 36%. That's awesome. Well, and I think what being coast to coast allows us to do is really tap into, the entrepreneurial culture per region to find out those stats and to find out where there might be gaps in the market or, some opportunities in ecosystem building. If there's a gap of not having a co-working space, clearly to me, that's having had a co-working space for the last 6 years myself. That was one of my goals is I know that it's an essential piece of infrastructure. You definitely need a gathering place for entrepreneurs to both work and both on demand and permanently if you need it, but also where you can actually just pop the water, I call it the water cooler conversation,
yeah.
Right? Where suddenly I'm just bumping into Michelle and say, Michelle, I'm looking for I have these birth challenges. Suddenly you just say, I can connect you with some solutions to solve that problem. And that happens all the time, right? And quite often people end up, the longer they get to know each other, they often collaborate on projects which are 10 times more impactful than working alone.
Absolutely. I'm a super big advocate for co-working spaces. I started mine in 2013. I was one of the first co-working spaces outside of the downtown core area. But what I found, there's a lot of education around the co-working space, because when I got out to the suburbs, it was like people were like, well, why do we need a co-working space? We have big offices in our houses. And where it's like the city, yeah, they have small apartments, so there was more of a need for it. But we found our niche with people who worked in teams that didn't want to work in each other's homes. And you're right, the more these people started working together, the more they would collaborate, and I would hire them, they would hire me. We would do there's so many, it just became like one big family. And it's interesting, but the water cooler talk, my team was just talking about it, and our team at Amplify U, we all work virtually and remotely, yet we're all in BC as well. But some of us have never met because we're, but we're all geographically spread out throughout our province. And the one thing we were saying was we miss those water cooler talks.
Absolutely. And it's amplified literally with COVID, that we're all more in our home space. But as the future of work really is that we will all be distributed. We will all be, on our laptops working. And the human connection and how those that you choose to engage with in person has a different role, right? That does not necessarily become your day-to-day administration and your day-to-day operations. I believe the people that you choose to connect with in person are your collaborators. They are your network expansion partners. They are your complementary archetypes, right? Or your complementary skill sets when you focus on this in person. Wouldn't it be great if I bumped into Michelle or Evan or others at the Amplify You team that, that can say, listen, and this is your skill set, your PR, communications, business advocacy, but let's back up a little. Have you thought about this? Mm-hmm. And having different minds to invigorate your own thinking, it's very, very difficult to put a value on that. Mm-hmm. So, essentially, we're both sharing the same thing, which is co-working and collaboration is invaluable, really, to the new business models of tomorrow.
Absolutely. And I can, it's funny, that same location that we started our first co-working space back in almost 8 years ago, there's now actually like 13 co-working spaces in that one area. And it's so funny because we thought we almost went out of business because there was not, like, people are just like, what? But it's nice to see that that's where the world's going. And especially COVID, I think, has kind of forced that on us a little bit too, which is so cool. So now you're the founder of Futurville. So I'm going to pivot and talk about that just for a second. So what is Futurville? And it all ties in with what you're doing, I think,
it does.
In this world, which is super cool.
Well, and a little bit like that, every problem is not really a problem. It's actually an opportunity if you combat it creatively. Like Robert and Phil's challenges with, Robert had the vision to take Canada's podcast national. Phil had the problem of, having a medium that allowed the connections he was looking for in order to grow his business. Those two merged and created Canada's podcast. I have a similar story, which is, I was operating a co-working space for 6 years. My original vision at expanding my business was having, more physical spaces on Vancouver Island. I had this vision of 5 spaces. And part of the business model of co-working spaces is layering revenues, right? It's having an investment fund where you can fund startups. It's having an event series that is more than just the locals attending. It's like in your example, having a podcast where it both is marketing and revenue generation built in. So it's really about having a diversified revenue, and the space is the leveraged asset that allows you to build a business. And so I spent 5 years propagating to everybody that came into the space to go digital. Make sure that you have digital revenue streams. And COVID hit, and I was really in that just past the good startup phase and onboarding all of my digital revenue streams. And cash flow ends, right? Which is all of my cash flow, which was really in the bricks and mortar side of the business, selling offices, meeting spaces on demand, event space on demand. Suddenly those things were non-existent with COVID. And I saw very quickly, I think we came back from spring break last year with my kids, literally during the COVID crisis. And I knew immediately that this was not going to be the 3-week shutdown that was first announced. I suspect that it could take up to 3 years. So we'll yet see. And I just said, you just can't afford to spend $12,000 a month on my pockets personally weren't deep enough to, maintain 3 years potentially of $12,000 output without input. And so I actually intentionally closed that business and launched Futurville. So Futurville, our massively transformative purpose is to imagine and build, right? So imagine and build places of the future, so villages of the future, places worth living for. And what that means is basically my sort of magic and fun for me is in the public relations, communications, and business brokering. That's where I love it. I'm not necessarily the producer of 3D printed homes, and nor am I the commercial builder that would love to be able to implement this technology. I'm the broker in between. So I love making sure that we get all the messaging right and we connect people to the right people at the right time. And so that is the business of Futurville. We are a platform. We have multiple revenue streams planned, but we're launching with representing a handful of businesses and suppliers and product, producers that we as a world should be deploying smarter, faster, better than ever imagined. So we're coming up with campaigns and solutions like a roadshow, which is taking 3D printed companies into communities across Western Canada so they can have a lived experience of touching and feeling and watching how they're built so that people can pre-order. That would be an example of some of the PR and engagement strategies that we're deploying. And then, of course, we'll grow over time.
That's an exciting place to be at in business, where you get to, marry two very complementary services or programs to then create something even more amazing and bring it out to the public that's going to enhance their experience with something. So I love what you're up to. I think that's really fascinating. So future-proofing, future-proofing, and future-villing are countries where you're going to next. That's awesome. I love this. So Angela, it's been so awesome to have you on our podcast, and we've learned so much about, how you are doing podcasts differently, how you're so innovative in what you're creating with the Futurville and all the exciting things that you have coming up there. What is something that you're most looking forward to as we're going further into 2021 right now?
So I have joined a community of consultants and entrepreneurs and movers and shakers called the Open EXO community. And the reason why I'm so excited about this group is because it is a complete ecosystem of people who are doing, who are focused on exponential organizations. So I am an ambassador for that group. I have the consultancy training in that group to actually help pivot both a mindset and a business model shift. And of course, my focus is in the built environment, so independent commercial property owners or communities that have property owners collectively proximate. So that community is very exciting for me. I would encourage anybody to follow and look for and search for how to become an exponential organization or an exponential individual.
That's amazing. So where would you suggest people who look to find out more information about that?
So for that, you can connect with me first at Futurville on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And I will send you an actual referral code to join the community. And the more touch points you have with people in the community, the more we can broker the right connections for you.
Yeah, that's great. Would be kind of like finding joint venture partners for people in there, or is it on a different kind of level?
Absolutely. It's quite a community. They have their own currency. So we actually have our own digital currency within that. So we actually trade services with each other with cryptocurrency and fiat currencies. But there's also a marketplace, and every day they're looking for advisors and coaches and consultants. Sometimes there's investment opportunities. So, it's quite a dynamic group.
Amazing. That sounds like a really cool part of future-proofing what we're doing. And I just love, I love the way that this business is just so fast-forwarding into a new way of doing business, a new way of being, a new way of, and Angela, you're for sure at the forefront of this. And it's been really cool to have this conversation with you, leading the way in our future of the way we do business with each other as entrepreneurs. And it was a very exciting time. So any last words, Angela, before we let you go?
I just want to say thank you to you, Michelle. It's been a pleasure to be on here. I look forward to possibly engaging with Amplify You in greater, more capacity going forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with us and spending your time today. It's been our pleasure, and we look forward to following you on your new adventures as you forge the way through entrepreneurism and business in our country. So thank you for all that you do. And guys, Amplify You family, make sure you connect with Angela on LinkedIn and at Futurville, and make sure you connect with her over there. All right. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Angela.